bass.
Welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine. If you enjoy this programming, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Join Truth and Rhythm's membership program through Patreon. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkandstuff.net. At that site, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm.
I am delighted to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership R&B singer Stacy Lattisaw Jackson. Just 12 years old when her debut album came out in 1979, during the next 10 years she'd go on to record 9 more LPs, with 4 reaching the R&B top 20. During that highly successful period, often working with producer Narada Michael Walden, she notched a dozen top 15 R&B hits that included Love on a Two-Way Street, Let Me Be Your Angel, Nail It to the Wall, and the Johnny Gill duets Perfect Combination and Where Do We Go From Here. Retiring from popular music while still in her early 20s, she turned her life's focus toward family, church, and spirituality, authoring her autobiography in 2011 called I Am Not the Same Girl Renewed. Stacy, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you again for gracing us with your presence. Much appreciated.
Yes, it's good to be with you guys.
And where are you talking to us from today?
I am in my home. We reside in the suburbs, Washington, D.C. area. I'm from D.C., of course, and my family's still here and never, ever wanted to move. Just decided to stay here.
Well, I can understand. I didn't get to see DC until, just a few years back because I'm from the West Coast. But now I'm on the East Coast since 2006. And seeing it after that for the first time was a thrill. So I've been back a couple of times and I enjoy DC very much.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's DC's changed a lot. Like I said, I was born with my family and friends still being here. We've always been a close-knit family, and just decided to stay in the area. And I now have 2 grandchildren that I adore. It's a different kind of love. Oh my gosh. I have been retired from the music industry. Wow, I believe I was 24 because my husband and I just got married at 25. And we've been married now for 31 years. That's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, congratulations on that. And congratulations on the grandkids and all of that. That's fantastic. Well, so Stacy, what drew you to music in the first place, though? And did you have an aha moment when you were very young that, hey, I'm going to do this?
Actually, no, I did not. It didn't happen that way at all for me. Everyone's story's different, and there are a lot of aspiring singers, rappers, actors, but Mine wasn't never to sing professionally. My mother sang with Marvin Gaye here in DC. He had a local group. They actually went to school together. That's how my story began, through my mom. And at the time, she was actually the lead singer in the group that Marvin Gaye formed. And so Marvin Gaye, rest his soul, he was the keyboard in the player in the group. And my mother, like I said, she was a singer. Her stage name was Sandra Storm. And so, yeah, my mother was a really, really, really good singer, but she never really, her career never, it just never blossomed. She just basically was a local artist. And by the time I was 6 years old, I remember that my mother used to sing a lot in the kitchen. And I would kind of mimic the things that she sang. And, she kind of recognized that there was something there. And by the time I was 9 years old, my sister asked me to sing a song at her school. They were having a talent show. And I was like, no, I don't think that's something I want to do. I'm okay with singing at home, you know, but I don't want to sing on the stage. I don't want to do it in that way. But yeah, I'm just envisioning all these people on the stage in high school, you know. But I remember very clearly that my mother told me that she would give me $10 if I'd sang at the talent show. And I thought about it for a minute and I was like, you know what? I can go to the toy store and I can buy some toys with that money. So yeah, she bribed me to sing at my sister's talent show, as I said before. And after that, we began to get phone calls. My parents, of course, began to get phone calls from people that were having talent shows, fashion shows, and different events in the Washington D.C. area, and they wanted me to sing. Uh, and I didn't want to do it. Once again, it was never, it was never a dream of mine to be a professional singer on that level. But I think it was my mother's dream. In fact, I know it was her dream. And I think that my mom was trying to live her dream through me because that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to be a star, and she wanted to, she wanted to go in the studio and record albums. She didn't do any of that. So, like I said, for her, I think living her dream through me, it was maybe it was just, it was just her what she wanted to do. And as I said before, being a child star at such a young age, at the age of 12, um, I didn't have a clue, what what was ahead of me, of course. Um, but as I look back on the opportunities and the things that I was able to do and accomplish, and it was truly amazing. I'll never forget. I was outside playing with my friends at 14 years old, and our house was always the house where, people, all my friends would gather at my home, and we played volleyball, kickball, and we would actually have talent shows in my basement, and that was something that I started. I like to sing, and I had a few friends that acted. Some friends wanted to dance. Some friends wanted to rap. Some friends wanted to sing along with me. And like I said, at 14, I had already been signed to Atlantic. At 12 is when I recorded that first album over at Atlantic Records. But at 14, I'll never forget, I got the phone call from Michael Jackson's management company. And they wanted me to open for the Jacksons in 1981 for the Triumph Tour. And I was like, no, absolutely no. This is not what I want to do. And I was like, I'm sitting here thinking about all these people that are going to be there, you know, because Michael Jackson was such a huge star. I mean, who wouldn't want that opportunity, you know, to open for the Jacksons? But at 14, I wasn't, I mean, who would think about that? You know, who would even begin to um, think about such an opportunity to not only meet Michael Jackson, but to travel with him? And the tour was for, wow, it was 13 weeks. And we went to 36 different cities. And during that time, I literally had to come out of school because my records were being played on the radio, and then came the bullying. So I went through a lot, but it was a tremendous opportunity, and that was the beginning of my journey, I would say. Having,
Let me jump in,
you know,
if I could, Stacy. Thank you for that. Um, yeah, wow. So that first record was Van McCoy was part of that before
mhm,
Narada got involved.
mhm.
So, do you remember what was that first experience like when you finally got in a studio? And do you remember anything about Van McCoy?
I remember, oh my gosh, he was one of the nicest people I'd ever met. I'd met lots of during that time when my career began. I met lots of I started meeting celebrities and songwriters, producers, and Van McCoy was different. He just had such a nice, warm, welcoming personality. He was so easy to work with. And I'll never forget one of the things that was funny to me when I think about that time in the studio. I finished the entire album in 3 days. Um, but the earphones, my head was so small that the earphones kept falling forward. So I had to keep on making adjustments. It was so funny. Obviously, they didn't have, you know, children's earphones and the microphone because, you know, that studio was for adults. But so my situation was always odd because I was just a little girl at 12 years old in the studio recording an album. And it was amazing when I even think about it now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did that.
Hmm.
But by the grace of God, you know, like I said, Narada Michael Walden, he was my, I would say, I had the opportunity to work with different songwriters and producers along the way, but Narada, oh my gosh, he was in a class of his own. And he and I are still friends today. We talk periodically, but the other songwriters and producers I work with didn't establish a relationship with him at all. It was just Narada.
Yeah, it seemed like he was definitely like maybe a mentor, a musical mentor,
Yeah.
for sure. And such a difference between that first record was like very old fashioned and sounding, and and then he came in, and you were all of a sudden you were just completely contemporary and just a whole different thing.
Yes, indeed. And you know, I was just talking about just sharing this story not long ago because it was amazing how, you know, it's so amazing how things unfold and how God illustrates things and you know, I'm sorry, orchestrates things and places different people in your life and kind of put the pieces together, put of the puzzle, you know. Um, I'll never forget when I signed with Atlantic Records. The first album, When You're Young and in Love, many people thought that that was like I'm sorry, let me retract this statement. Many people thought that Let Me Be Your Angel was my first album, but it was not. When You're Young and in Love was my very first album, but because of the songs, they would call them bubblegum songs because they had to be age appropriate, you know, for a 12-year-old um little girl. You know, they had to be written, you know, for me, and they were. But I remember very clearly that the radio stations really weren't playing the songs. So by the time Henry Allen, God rest his soul, he was the president of Atlantic Cotillion Records. And Henry was the one that found Narada Michael Walden. And I don't know how, but I'll never forget, Henry called our home one day. And he says, there's this songwriter, producer. He's actually a drummer, but he writes and produces songs. And I want Stacy and him to connect. So they flew Narada to our home. Narada at the time resided in San Francisco, and I think he still does, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Narada came to our home in DC, and Narada literally wrote "Let Me Be Your Angel" in our living room. Yeah. He wrote the chorus in our living room, and he started putting together the verses of the song. And I didn't have a clue what he was doing, but he would just say to me, repeat this after me. So he was going over the key to make sure the key was correct. He was making sure the chorus was correct, and he put the song together piece by piece. So when he left our home, he went back to San Francisco and he pieced it all together, and it became "Let Me Be Your Angel." And obviously it was one of my biggest records, and still to this day, thankfully, I'm so grateful that radio stations still play that song after what? Oh my gosh, 40 years. Are you kidding
me? Yeah. And where did the time go, right? It's unbelievable. I mean, I remember hearing it too. It doesn't seem like all that time, but what was it like? What was it like, Stacy, when you first heard yourself on the radio?
It's funny when I think about it sometimes. Just last night, my husband and I had gone out, and we were going out to grab something to eat, and "Where Do We Go From Here" came on the radio. I was like, wow, they're still playing these songs. It's amazing after 4 years, man. But the very first time I heard "Let Me Be Your Angel," I would say, I was at home, and the radio was on. The radio station was playing my song, and I was like, that's me. That's my record. So that was a big moment for me, I'll say. And it was amazing, because I like I said before, even at the age of, I was 12 and a half, almost 13. That was huge to hear your song on the radio, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
And how much time did you have to put in to prepare for, a stage show? And, were you just spending all of your hours outside of maybe school or tutoring, on the music?
Actually, I did a lot of rehearsing at home. My mom made sure that I did that. I had a lot of rehearsals, like I said, in which I was going over dance steps with the choreographer, going over the lyrics and the melody and that type of thing. But I guess for me, the most difficult thing during that particular time was being in school and having to navigate my way through that time, because I had a challenging time in school. I was picked on, I was bullied, because of me being so light-skinned, with green eyes. I am mixed, Canadian, Caucasian, and African American. So I did have a tough time, as I said before. And my mother was the one that realized that. One day I came home from school, and she knew that something was wrong. And, a mother knows, we know these things with our children. And so it went on for a while, and I didn't say anything to her because I didn't really know how to handle it, And so I remember very clearly that my mother went up to the school, and she talked to this one girl in particular that she used to, oh my gosh, she used to pull my braids in school. And she sat right behind me in school, in the classroom. And I would tell the teacher, but not a lot, because I felt like if I told, then she was really going to beat me up, And so, like I said, my mom went to the school and she talked to the little girl and she talked to the teacher. And needless to say, that ended immediately. She never picked with me anymore. And I guess that's why to this day I have such a passion for people and children in general that are bullied, because I know what it's like firsthand. So I started a mentoring program in which I work with children ages 12 through 18. And I love working with kids. I love helping. I love assisting in whatever way I can.
That's fantastic, turning that, negative experience into a very positive one.
Absolutely.
Definitely the way to go. So, love hearing that. And Narada brought in like just such crackerjack musicians too. I mean, on those records, you had just amazing players, and it was so finely polished and honed, and just immaculate pop, dance, R&B material. And that third record with "Love on a Two-Way Street," I mean, that really was a smash. And that record cover with you, that was a really cute photo, and just really, I think you really hit your full stride with that one.
I think so too. I think around that time I was finally got my niche. I was trying to discover, I guess my strong points in my voice, and kind of, I guess my voice was still developing, of course. But as far as the songs were concerned, one thing I remember that used to really bug me is that I really didn't have any very very little say in the song selections, and I never thought that was fair, because I was like, I'm 16 years old. How come I can't pick and choose some songs for my album? Because I recorded one album a year. Over at Atlantic, I recorded 6 albums. And then I moved over to Motown and recorded 4 albums. So that was a total of 10 albums altogether during my career. But yeah, that was one of the things that really bothered me as a recording artist. And of course, the music industry is different today. But I think probably my age was a factor. I was so young. Maybe they felt like, well, she doesn't know what songs are best for her. But I knew, because I had an ear to hear a hit record. I knew. I felt like I knew when I heard a song. In fact, there was one song in particular that the record label did not want me to record. And it was entitled Miracles. And that, to me, it was one of the most beautiful songs I'd ever heard. And I'm so glad that they listened to us, meaning my mother and I, and a few other people. We suggested that song, and they were like, well, I don't think this song is good enough, blah, 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 blah. But they ended up letting me record it. And it did quite well. It's a beautiful song. It still is.
Yeah, that was on the 16 album, I see, and it got to number 13. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that must have felt great since you were behind it like that.
Yes, it did.
Vindication, right?
Yes, indeed.
And of course, Love on a Two-Way Street got to number 2. I guess that was no, you later on got a number 1, but it was your highest charting on your own without Johnny Gill.
Yes.
It's so much fun looking at your covers now, with all the 10 records, and just seeing how you matured in your look and your themes and the titles and the sound and your singing voice. It's just really fascinating to see that evolution.
Yeah.
Right?
It really was. It was, like I said, it was such an interesting time in my life, because my voice was continuing to mature. And therefore, in my age, and the song selections began to change, because the music industry was changing. And so therefore, I think it was around the time I was probably maybe 21 or 22 is when it was brought to my attention that because of the music industry changing, that the song selections needed to be more sexual and my dressing needed to be more sexual. And that's when I really, really, really was like, this is not the direction that I'm going in. And I had already recorded. I'm sorry, I was probably 21, 22. So I didn't record the duet with Johnny Gill, Where We Go From Here. That was the number one song that we recorded on my album. So yeah, that it was such an interesting time for me because I had made a decision that if that's the route that I had to go down to stay relevant or for my career to go to the next place, as they would say, then this is what you have to do. And I remember very clearly saying to my management company, and I had a conversation with some people over at Motown, and I was like, this is not for me. I had to start dressing more provocatively, and I wasn't raised that way. And it just wasn't who I was, and it's still not who I am today. So that's why I chose to walk away from a number one song. And many people were like, who walks away from a number one song? And I said, me. And I just feel like, how do I say this? I have to be mindful of what I say because people sometimes take your words and misconstrue them, and they just kind of twist them around. Next thing you know, you have all this craziness on the internet. But it disturbs me. I'll just say this: it disturbs me when I hear and see some of the songs, the R&B songs that are played on radio stations today. And I say this out of love. There are so many gifted young singers, female singers especially, that dress in such a way where it disturbs me. It disturbs me. And I have to be careful how I say what I want to say. But music, when back in the 70s, 80s, music used to be about that. The industry, I'm sorry, used to be about singing. It used to be about, love songs, staying together, working things out. But the music that we hear on the radio today, it's totally opposite. And that's why I know for me, when I get in my car, I choose to listen to what I want to listen to. I love Air Supply. I love Celine Dion. I love Aretha Franklin. I love Natalie Cole. I love the OJs. I love many of the songs that back then they still are beautiful songs. When you listen to them on the radio today, and even a lot of the songs that Narda wrote and produced for Mariah Carey, those were beautiful songs. And the staying power is there. And in my opinion, that's what separates some of the real music from what we are hearing today. And I don't care at this point, who disagrees with what I'm saying, but it's gotten away from real singing. It's gotten away from, ballads have gotten away from love, the meaning of love. What is love? Why do we even sing about love? It's pretty interesting, and it's a conversation I think that someone needs to have. Because whatever happened to real R&B music. What happened to it? Is it ever going to come back? That's my question. Will it ever come back to where it was before?
Well, I don't know
Because
if I don't know if I don't know if it will through the industry, but I mean, there's certainly a lot of love for it out there, and people seeking it through the internet, wherever way they can.
I think
And
so.
I mean, all the viewers of this program are evidence of that too. And I'm all about preserving those legacies and educating young people to what they might be missing if they don't get exposed.
That's
So,
cool. I'm
um,
sorry that you're doing that because there needs to be more people like you because it's like, wow, when I turn on the radio sometimes, I'm like, are you kidding me?
but
You
I
know,
was just curious, Stacy, when you were young, though, who were some of your biggest singing influences?
oh my gosh, I used to love listening to Natalie Cole. I had the honor of meeting her, I believe it was maybe 1981 or 82. She was an outstanding woman. She was so funny. She loved to laugh. Um, she had a beautiful personality. And I just always enjoyed her music. I enjoyed her style of singing. Um, of course, Michael Jackson, of course, who doesn't, who didn't listen, still doesn't listen and love Michael Jackson's music, in my opinion. There will never be another Michael Jackson. Um, I listened to a lot of Gladys Knight songs as well. My mother was a huge fan of Gladys Knight. And so those were the type of songs that, we listened to a lot.
Now,
Hmm.
now, since you were on that Triumph tour, and Michael Jackson, above anybody knows what it's like to be a child star. Was he
Yeah.
able to impart any advice to you, being so young, or no?
Actually, Michael was so quiet and I was very quiet. I mean, I was 14 when I had the honor of opening for him. So we did go backstage after he performed. We They allowed us to go into his dressing room to speak to him on numerous occasions. And I would go over to him and talk to him just for basically to speak to him and take pictures. But he really didn't give me any advice. No, I wish he had. I wish he had.
Hmm.
But yeah, I got up there on pure guts. And I sang, and all of the venues that we performed at were like stadium type venues, like 20,000 seaters. So it was all, like I said, it was huge. That was a huge opportunity for me.
How'd
Uh,
you get over your stage fright?
I never did. I never ever got over it. I dealt with it the best way I could, but I can understand how some people, you know, um, could, you know, I don't know if I would say if I didn't have Christ as being my foundation, I could have, strayed in a bad path because there were drugs all around. You know, I could never remember. I'm sorry, I could never forget. We had gone to, I think it was Jamaica or Trinidad. As soon as we got off the plane, there was someone there, and they were offering us drugs. And it, like I said, between the after parties and things, I never participated. Even when I reached the age of 18, 19, 21, that was just something I never wanted to do. And so I was pretty much a square, I would say, in the music business, because certain things I just didn't want to participate in. So maybe at the end of the day, I've thought about it a few times. I said, well, maybe it wasn't for me because, as I said before, I made the decision to walk away from it at the age of 25. And thanks be to God, I was able to retire from the music industry. And I married Kevin, and um, we have two businesses God has blessed us with, and I never had to go back. I never had to work. So I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful, and I don't take it for granted.
When I'm sorry, when you made that switch to Motown, that record "I'm Not the Same Girl," which ended up being a title of your book, that record didn't chart, and I was wondering what happened there. Did the label take like songs maybe you had already done and put out that record, and then you were doing new stuff on Motown, or what happened in that transition from Atlantic to Motown?
That's a good question because I often wonder myself, that was a weird time. That was a very weird time. I remember when I left Atlantic Records and Motown was the label. I'll never forget. My manager at the time contacted me and said that Motown was interested in signing me because my contract with Atlantic was up. It had expired. And so yeah, that's an interesting question because so much foolishness went on. And that's another reason why I guess I kind of began to lose even more interest for the industry because my management at the time, I was beat out of a lot of money. And I'm sure you heard this story a lot of times. The record label told me I was in the hole, I was in the red, and therefore I was not going to be receiving royalties, which we thought was absurd, because my records were being played and my records were selling on, but that's what we were told. So lo and behold, here it is now, what, 30, over 30 years, as I said before, 40 years later. And do you believe that I just started receiving royalties last year? Is that not terrible?
Pretty bad. Why did it finally start happening? Just because a certain amount of time went by, or?
No. And I hate to even think about it sometimes because I'm sorry, I didn't even want to talk about this, but it just goes to show how the music industry is not what a lot of people think it is. All they see is the glitter and the glitz and, the performing and, the all they see is one side of it. But when it comes to the business part of the industry, my parents never knew anything about the industry. My father worked at the government printing office. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. So because of us not knowing these things and the terms and conditions of contracts, I was beat out of a lot of money. And so it was just brought to my attention 2 years ago that I was owed a lot of money from these labels. And I just finally started getting royalties after 40 years. That's terrible. That's absolutely terrible because I worked from the time I was 12 to 25. And they really took advantage of us not knowing.
Especially hate to hear that of a minor, of a kid, basically. Just unconscionable,
Yeah, it was terrible.
Glad to hear you're getting some justice now. Better late than never, I guess. But I saw also when you went over to Motown, you got exposed to, really top producers like Kashif and Leon Silvers and these kinds of guys. Do you remember working with any of those guys at all?
I remember working with Kashif. Quite honestly speaking, God rest his soul, that was not the best relationship. That didn't go quite well. That was who they chose to write and produce songs for me. But I'll never forget one of the things that, Kashif said to me. He was like, well, I want you to sing it this way. Sing it like Janet Jackson. And I was like, I don't mean any harm, but, You want me to sing it like Janet Jackson? I'm not Janet Jackson. So I just kind of felt like that was ridiculous for him to say that. So quite naturally, it turned me off. And I'm not saying that in an arrogant, boastful way, but I thought that it was a bit disrespectful, because I had already established my own style. So there was no need for me to try and sound like anyone else or be like anyone else. But yeah, that to me, that was not a good mix. Not at all.
Yeah, I was going to say Jump Into My Life definitely was a Janet Jackson type of
It was
track.
not.
Yeah.
There were so many songs, unfortunately. There were so many songs, and I'm just being transparent, that I did not want to sing or record. And I know that it came across on the songs. It came across on the albums. You know, there was a song in particular that I really, really, really loved. And it was entitled Let Me Take You Down. It was written and produced by Lou Pace, if I'm not mistaken. And the way we came across that song was quite amazing. We went to Florida. That's where he had a home there, and his big, beautiful recording studio was there. And he had this song. He said, I want you to hear this song. And I listened to it, and I fell in love with it immediately. And so that, to me, was one of the best songs that I recorded. And that was pretty much really at the peak of my voice, if you've ever heard that song before.
It's an excellent soul ballad.
That
Yeah.
song, absolutely beautiful. And at that time, during that time I was at Motown, Motown was not as supportive as they could have been. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it was Shanice Wilson or I don't know who it was, but the interest was not where it could have been. That could have been a huge record for me. But they weren't promoting it like they could have. And once again, I was let down because I felt like this is such a beautiful song. Why aren't you guys behind it? Why aren't you guys making sure it gets played on the radio? Why aren't you guys making sure, there's a video? They didn't give me a video for it. Like I said before, I got a lot of bad breaks in the industry. How was it that you have these beautiful songs and the label will not pay for a video for the artist? That was ridiculous. That should have come out of the budget. But they used to tell me things, well, there's not enough money in the budget for a video. And I was just so disappointed because I was like, that makes no sense. So then here comes, where do we go? I'm sorry, What You Need. Now that's a whole different story. I never liked that song. I didn't feel like that was a good fit for me. It was too pop. Did not like it at all. But it was a song that they made me record. So when you're in a situation like that, right? You're signed to a label. The label says, well, these are the songs you're going to record for this album. And you have no input. It was the whole thing that time for me was it was difficult, and
You also you did a cover of Ain't No Mountain High Enough with Howard Hewitt.
yeah. He was fun to work with. He was pretty nice person. Yeah, and I thought that the song went quite well. But once again, there was no video for it. There was very, very little support from the record label. So radio stations did not play it much. Same thing. Same situation.
That was not even a single, that one.
Nope, it was not. Was not even a single. You're right. It was not a single. So therefore it would not have been a video. But I just never understood why they didn't pick that for a single. So by the time, as I said before, What You Need was chosen as a single. When I found that out, I was like, are you kidding me? Why would they choose that for a single? This song should not be a single. It should just be an album cut. So that song they did, agreed to do a video. And it was amazing how this came to part. Puffy, his friend, who his nickname was Hot Dog. Hot Dog was the choreographer for that song video, right? So Puffy just happened to be there with Hot Dog. They were friends. And at the time, Puffy worked in the mailroom from Motown Records. So he had not even been discovered, right? So, like I said before, Hot Dog was trying to teach me the dance steps, and I couldn't quite get them down right. I had a rough time because, I used to dance, but that was not my strong point. Um, so yeah, Puffy comes over to me. He's like, he comes over. Yeah, well, Hot Dog was right there on one side of me, and then Puffy comes over to the other side. I was like, I got it, man. I'll work with her. I'll teach her how to do it. So he starts to teach me how to do these dance steps, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm finally getting it down. So it worked out quite well. And so yeah, that was actually Puffy's, from what I was told, that was Puffy's first time being in a video was mine. And I never even heard a word from Puffy. I reached out to him several times. I was like, oh my gosh, really?
What was he even known as Puffy then?
I'm sorry.
Was he even known as Puffy at that time?
Yeah, I think that was his nickname, Puffy Combs. They used to call him Sean Puffy Combs. But I reached out to him on social media. I tried to reach out to him through a mutual friend. And this was during the time when my career was probably on a down slope, right? And that's when his began to rise. And I was kind of thinking, well, maybe he can help me, uh, with these record company people, but it didn't work out. But it was everything that happened was supposed to happen. That's the way I see it.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.